with all due respect.
All right, we are live with episode 13 of With All Due Respect. Yeah, I almost blew it right off the rip. So today is all things women, right? All things women
for the girls.
You know, we talked about what we want for the ladies, for the baddies. Cool. I don't know. I'm not cool.
Yeah.
For the baddies. I'm not that cool. We talked about subjects, right? What do you want to call this? And what do we want to call it? We called it all things fitness and fat loss for women. And you guys were quick to be like, oh, it's got to be more than fat loss, right? And I agree, right? It's got to be more than fat. This isn't just fat loss, but I wonder if you polled 100 women, how many women are going to say, I want to lose weight? What's your like? If I had 100 women, I wonder how many women would say, their goal is to lose weight, right? So today we're bringing on Olivia Daniels, right? Olivia, you work with Gray, we know that, but give a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, what got you in the fitness space. I know a little bit from what Gray's told me, right? But talk a little bit about your role in fitness, how you got here, what your passions are, and then we'll roll right into the topic of women-specific fitness. And I think this is going to be, listen, I honestly think this is probably going to be the most viewed so far, right?
Ooh,
anything around fitness and women.
I
really do. I really do. So give us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, why you're not blurred out like the rest of us. You're obviously a rebel, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I think I'm less of a rebel and more of a noob. I don't see this all
we
the
just
time.
learned.
If you were to ask me to blur my background, like we would have needed to take another 10 minutes before we recorded. Hi guys. Hi, especially to the ladies that are listening today and to anyone listening to this episode who has a woman in their life that they want to support on their fitness journey. My name is Olivia Daniels Jones. I work with Gray at Spanga. I am the lead instructor at that studio, as well as a master instructor for Spanga Corporate. There are about 6 of us located around the country. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I grew up in South Carolina. I'm from this part of the state. Fitness was always a part of my life, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little while, particularly modeled by my mother. Gray knows my mom. Exercise is, and she is like a Energizer bunny of
she's my woo girl.
She really is. There's a huge joke in my family about her woos, but anyway, so fitness is, I grew up with an awareness of fitness, and I grew up with an awareness of the importance of making fitness a part of your life, which I'm abundantly grateful for. So I always understood that it was a tool I could use for self-care, of course, stress management, etc., me time, that kind of thing. But it wasn't something I did professionally until 2020. I call it my old corporate life. I worked in tech, in sales. It served its purpose. It was a season. I met my husband through that job, so it wasn't all for naught. But it certainly wasn't anything I was passionate about. And I got laid off from my job during the pandemic in 2020. If you know one thing about me, I'm not a particularly patient person. It's certainly one of my weaknesses. And I was on the phone with unemployment on hold for about 10 minutes and decided I don't have time for this. So instead, I got a job working hourly at the front desk of a yoga studio that I still teach at today. But at the time, I was just working at the desk, making some hourly income, kind of using that as a launching pad for what was to come next. And it's just, it could be much longer of an explanation, but long story short, one door open led to another, opened up trainings. Through the trainings, I started teaching classes. From the classes, I had this girl, Melissa, who came to take a class. Turns out she was becoming the GM of Spanga, really resonated with my teaching style, invited me in to train there. And that really opened up more of what I would call a career out of it. Again, like I said, I'm now the lead instructor at our studio here. I work for them corporate, so I work with candidates and instructors all over the country. I think dedication and intention and passion for it has led me to becoming an ambassador for Lululemon, which happened last year. A super organic partnership, just members from their staff started taking my classes, and it really resonated with them, the way that I teach and the way that I speak, and try to cultivate community within my classes. And now we're here. And I think, what I love about this industry is the access that I feel that I have to so many different people that are in so many different places of life. And for me personally, despite having, aforementioned relationship and access to fitness in my own life, I've had a really, really roller coaster of a journey with fitness and with food, body image, mental health. It's really been a journey. So I think I am able to empathize with all of my clients, no matter where they are in their journey, mentally, physically. And it's so fulfilling and so rewarding. And I love working in this industry because every night when I go to bed, it feels impactful. And that's something that's so important to me.
Do you think that's something you were missing in your tech job?
Yeah. And here's what I'll say. I'm careful when I say that because I know that I am fortunate. I've found, a passion and a calling in my mid-20s. Find that fulfillment. I also was not taking particularly great care of myself at that time of my life, and so I think it's also easy for me to look back on it with kind of a chip on my shoulder, but a lot of that was the way that I was kind of navigating that part of my life. But, someone like my husband who's still in this field, I think he does a really great job of managing a work-life balance and finding, passion and joy in his life that doesn't come from work.
Sure. When you say you can say as much as you want about this. I think saying one thing that resonates true to women that I've found, because I've not being a woman, you don't sometimes the conversations I have with female clients aren't as in depth, and I understand, and I totally understand. I honestly, when we talk to people for the first time, no matter how we came, whether there's someone that knew somebody that I coach that wants to work with somebody, I always give a woman the option to work with Gray, right? Because they come to, because I do that in the way, like, I want them to be in the most comfortable environment possible. And if they're like, they reach me and said, hey, I know you worked with so-and-so, I'm interested in nutritional coaching for weight loss. I said, that's great. I said, we have two options for you, me or Gray. Right. You can work with one of us. And that doesn't, because I want them to be in a better environment. They might have some things they want to talk to Gray about that they would not want to talk to me about.
Sure.
But what I have found is something that probably resonates with more women than not is the relationship with food, fitness, their body, their image, their self-esteem, how all of those are connected more. I would say that that's probably more with women than it is with men, a lot more with women and men. So I think there's a little bit, sometimes women, there's a little bit more emotional connection to their food and their body and where fitness is in their life, and the image and what we see in the media and what people tell us women are, and what a healthy woman is and what she's supposed to look like and what she's supposed to eat and be like and what men want or whatever. I find that to be more common than not. I think for you to say that, there's going to be a lot of women that watch this and be like, well, me too.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's going to resonate more.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born in the 90s, grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. And, I think it's recognized societally as like a pretty difficult time to be a woman. I can remember being 3 feet tall and standing in line at the grocery store and singing the titles or the covers of the magazines of how to lose 15 pounds in 10 days or whatever it was, or what were you could drink all these drinks and you could put all these things in your waters that were just supposed to be these magic pills. The Special K diet, like everything that was pushed to women was, you need to be smaller, 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 you need to make yourself small. And I think that had, an umbrella effect, not only physically, but mentally too. And yeah, I try to be very open because I think there's a lot of power in vulnerability and in connection. And I think to your point, Josh, um, especially for people that are starting out on their journey, it is so empowering to feel seen and to feel like the person that, it takes a lot of courage, particularly when people are starting their journey, to make that decision to show up for a workout class or to join that gym. It's such a brave decision. And I think if I can be that person when they walk in the door that validates them and recognizes their courage and can acknowledge how difficult the journey may have been to get them to that point, that's always my number one goal. I had an incredibly disordered relationship with food on every level of the spectrum throughout my, starting from about the age 11, which is heartbreaking. I was pulled out of school in sixth grade for the first time for my relationship with food, which is just crazy to me. My niece is about to start sixth grade and she's a child. And so looking at that's been a big thing for me this year, is just kind of forgiveness of myself for how young I was. But it goes to show like how impressionable my brain was to all of this rhetoric from such an early age, right? That of course leads to and not necessarily mutually exclusive, but not always the best relationship with exercise. Certainly seeing exercise as a form of punishment, right? I can remember in college things like, oh, we went out and we drank and we ate late night food. I have to wake up and sweat it out the next day, right? That's not the relationship that should be had with exercise. It's not a punishment. It's not something we do because as a cause and effect type of thing, right? It should be what we're leading with. And it really took until probably when I left my tech job to really start to get a grasp on that. And this is a whole other level of conversation. I'm like the biggest proponent of therapy. Therapy has completely changed my life. It's completely rewired my brain. And it's been amazing that for the first time in 17 or 18 years, I feel finally at peace. But for anyone listening, I think it's really easy to look at someone like me or someone like Gray and see someone who, right, is at like the apex of their fitness, of their nutrition, of their wellness, of taking care of themselves. And it has been a journey. It has been a journey. And it's been one foot in front of the other, and you will backslide sometimes. And I think a big shift for me has been shifting the motivation from extrinsic, I want to look like this, I need to fit into this box, I want to fit into this size, or I want to see this number on the scale, to being intrinsic. I'm finally not hungry all the damn time because I'm feeding myself enough protein. I'm finally at peace with my workouts because now my motivator is I want to be really strong. I want to be able to pick up that dumbbell that I see over there, even if it's just for one rep. I am so sore today, I can't straighten my arms because I did unassisted pull-ups for the first time ever yesterday. Like those are the big wins for me now, right? Yeah. And it's not, I need to walk out of here and fit into a different size. And I'll tell you, like, it's a daily struggle, I think, as a woman, particularly if you've struggled with that in the past. It is something that I have to catch myself on every single day. But it's learning how to have that dialogue within your own brain and recognize your patterns and be able to break them and learn to make that shift. And I think finally for me, it was choosing peace, and recognizing that I was so tired. Yeah. I was so tired all the time.
When do you think you made the shift between extrinsic and intrinsic? Like how recently was that?
Probably, let's see, I really got serious with my therapy in January of 2022. So it's been about 2.5 years of like, this is my goal. Yeah.
Yeah. But you had here's the reason I ask is because I always tell people that kind of thought process, it takes a little bit of physical progress to make yourself fall into that thought process, because it's really hard to tell somebody who is 100 pounds overweight, oh, it's a mental thing. Because they haven't gotten to that place yet in their journey where they've seen any physical results. So they're still very extrinsically motivating. But I think it's a very good point that over time, you know, at first you're very glued to these materialistic ideas or these physical ideas of like, I want to be a certain size and I want to look this certain way. Over time, you get to this certain point where it's, I want to feel my best and I want to wake up in the morning not tired and I don't want to be hungry throughout the day. And like you said, I want to be able to do unassisted pull-ups. Like it takes time over that. So would you say that you were already in a better physique when that started? You had already seen physical progress? Yeah, that's the whole, and that's not like
Yeah.
discounting anything. It's just like for anybody listening, when we harp on that so much about going into the mental side of this, it just takes time. It takes time, but constantly seeking for it, like going to therapy, finding different ways to have low stress activity, finding different ways to work on yourself inwardly and outwardly.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you're someone that is extrinsically motivated, really just ensuring that whatever goals you're setting from an extrinsic perspective are realistic and make sense under a realistic timeline, right? Because I think,
100%.
and I've heard you guys talk to this a little bit before, but I think a way that people are going to lose steam really quickly, right, is they go in and they have this, you know, number in their mind. And I see this a lot talking with brides or people like this, right, who
Yeah.
have these big extrinsic goals. Understanding and, you know, working with someone who can help provide you the education of like, what is realistic here? Because if you're going into it and saying, I want to lose 15 pounds in 7 days, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to lose the motivation. I think another big thing for me, and this kind of goes into the women's role of fitness in the family a little bit, that
Yes.
if anyone is listening to this and is struggling to find some intrinsic motivation, and this is not going to land with everybody, and I completely respect a woman's right to choose whether or not she wants to have children one day or not. I have always wanted to be a mom, and it is so, particularly with my background in not respecting myself, and I'll just make that the umbrella. I was not respecting myself because I didn't love myself enough to take care of myself. I refuse to raise children if I myself do not feel that peace and have that positive relationship to food and exercise. Period. And so for me, a big motivator of me going to therapy was, I will not have a daughter one day that might look at their mom and say, well, she doesn't treat her body with kindness. And so that for me, at the very beginning of my journey, when I was not necessarily in the best physical fitness or physical shape, knowing that the way, imagining, you know, it's that kind of inner child imagination too. But for me, it was a potential future child. But protect, if future children isn't something that you want, if you're listening to this, thinking about yourself, you know, at 3-4 years old, would you want them to look at a version of you that is treating yourself with that lack of respect? And that was a huge intrinsic motivator for me. And that's really where a big shift came in on self-love. And I think that for women, you know, I'm very fortunate that my partner, in fact, he was a huge influence on me on, you know, making time for yourself, exercising, you know, 4 or 5 days a week, making that a priority, working that into your day no matter what. I've had partners in the past who shamed me for trying to work exercise into my day. And so I know what it's like on both sides of that, right? And that is a horrible feeling because you're out here trying to do something good for yourself. You're making time for yourself. And granted, I didn't have kids at the time. I can't imagine how much harder it would be if someone is shaming you and, you know, telling you that you need to be at home or doing XYZ, or maybe even if it's not someone else shaming you, if you just even feel that within yourself, right? I would so encourage, you know, anyone listening to this or anyone who feels that way to really seek community and to find people that understand the significance and the importance of prioritizing that part of your day, because it really is. I look at, you know, it was kind of like a before and after. The people I dated prior to meeting my husband, it simply was not nearly as important. And then watching the model that my husband set for me of, you know, making time either before or after work every single day to go to the gym, I wanted to be better, right? I was like, well, damn, this makes me really want to work out. I see how good or how well you take care of yourself. I'm really inspired and motivated um, to take care of myself in the same way. And I think for women, if you don't have that, if you don't have that person already within your family, you can be that person that's showing your kids or showing your husband, so many little things in the family are picked up simply by modeling behaviors. And so modeling this behavior for your family, you can be that person.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up though, because it's one of my favorite topics, because Josh's favorite thing to say, and he will say this forever and a day, is habits are caught, not necessarily taught. They're always caught. But we always hear the importance of having a strong like father figure, having a man that works out in the house. Like what are you going to do watching your dad? And we don't always talk about how important it is to have that same thing in your mother or just in a woman in the family. And sometimes the role almost gets diminished to just having like a nurturer and not somebody that's like a warrior. And I think that makes such a huge difference to have not only a strong father figure, but also a strong mother inside of the house. Or again, even if it's just a woman in your life that is a strong figure.
Two things that you said that came to mind. I recently had a client who texted me, and he's struggling right now. He goes, I know that I am loved. He goes, I have a child. I'm married. I know I have people around me that love me, but I'm pretty sure I don't love myself, and I can tell by how I treat my own body. He said that about him. And I think sometimes that's the very beginning of like just a hard smack of truth to the face, right? Like, and my only response to him was, well, that can change today. Like, like it doesn't have to change tomorrow. That can change today. You can go outside and walk, right? You can decide to eat a healthy dinner. Like it can start today, right? Like don't that's not an identity like that doesn't 1000% define who you are. You can change that. You can treat your body different. You're making the choice, right? I had another client, um, they had a garage gym, and we always had a hard time finding time for her to work out. And they had I want to say a good amount of like 3 or 4 kids, right? I know there's a difference between 3 and 4, but 4's probably harder than 3, but still they had enough kids to they had a litter, okay? And one of her things was it's hard for me to find time to get things done. I end up lifting late, and that means that dinner is done for my husband later than he likes. The first comment I thought was like, well, tell that asshole dinner's coming an hour late 2 days a week, right? And you tell him I said that, or you tell him
Can
to
he
get his
not
ass.
cook?
Yeah, you tell him to get his ass. And that's what I wanted to say. I was like, and the funny part is, he's the one that reached out to me to see if I would be willing to talk to his wife about improving her health habits because she wanted someone to help, and he knew me. And he reached out to me. I was like, and I never go anything further than that. I always go have her contact me. Like, I'm not going to talk to you about your wife, so bro. Like if you're the one leading, I need to talk to her to see if she really wants to do it, right? And he was the one that's like, yeah, she's really complaining about some things. She wants some help. I told her I knew you and I had to reach out. It's like, all right, fill out this form. Have her fill out this form. And she did, and we talked. But like, when she's like, yeah, dinner's just an hour later than 2 days a week, and da da da. It's just with I'm like, I'm gonna be like, give me his phone number. Tell you know, tell his ass to get in the kitchen, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, tell him to go figure it
Yeah.
out for a grown ass man, right? That doesn't work for me, right? Um, and man, I'm sorry his life is a little bit less inconvenient 2 days a week because you want to work out for 40 minutes. And I'm sorry your food's not in front of the TV while you're watching, Wheel of Fortune at 7, right? I'm sorry, right? I mean, it did. It really made me like, I remember being like, who is this? Like, and that kind of made me feel like, oh, dog, she must carry every hat in the family. Like, this dude must think like he needs to have the slippers ready for the inclined feet at the dinner. I was like, bro, you're not helping your wife be a better version of himself because you're complaining about dinner being an hour late. Get off me, right?
That's a hard thing. It's like
Yeah.
that falls on the responsibility of the mom in the family of the woman in the family. And it's just, it is hard. Like
Yeah.
it is hard to be a mom and to be an athlete and to cook dinner for your kids and get them ready for school. Like, especially if you don't have somebody else supporting you, it makes it 100 times harder, 1,000 times harder
It
to
is,
have that.
we've talked about this too. It is very, very hard to not have both people on board.
Mm-hmm.
When we did our conversation with Erica, I'm quick to apologize for us men who can be very stubborn. When it took her husband 6 months to get on board, she was already down like 70 pounds. And she was 6 months, she was down 70 pounds. And then after like 70 pounds, she's like, maybe I need to start eating some more
Yeah.
protein and going for walks. I'm like, wow. It took 60, 70 pounds for the dude to be on board. I've seen some really messed up things, man. I've seen women say that their husbands will come home with like ice cream for
Fast
like
food.
fast food or ice cream for him and the kids, and him and the kids will not eat it, but then he'll never bring any home for her and kind of shame her for like, well, I didn't bring it home for you, you're eating better, right? I mean like that's horrible, right?
It's
Like
tough.
that's really tough. Doing that, that's crappy. That's crappy to do to somebody who's
Yeah.
trying to get better in
Yeah.
life and get healthy. One of the
Well, and I
subjects.
think,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say really quickly to that point, I think you said it multiple times, but on both sides of the coin, like whether it's coming from a partner or a family member or even from the self, a lot of times shame is at the root of all of it, right? And I think another big thing that I hear all the time, and talking about, your client that reached out to you about not loving themselves, I think that self love is so intimately tied to forgiveness of self, right? And I can't tell you how many times I hear clients come in and say, "Oh, God, Olivia, I've let myself go," or I should have started this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is." And I always just, I always want to ask, what are you gaining by, you know, holding yourself so responsible from that perspective? I know you guys buy into this philosophy, but a lot of times you have to get out of your own way. And that
Mm-hmm.
starts by forgiving yourself for any of your perceived shortcomings or any of the things that you feel like have been roadblocks along your journey along the way. All that matters is that you are here and that you are ready to start now.
Yeah.
And that right there is an act of self love. But you have to forgive anything outside of that. Nothing will grow if the soil has not been turned over. You've got to turn it over. You've got to look at it as starting fresh, in order to really be in that place of self-love. And again, I
Yeah.
learned that. And I think, again, so much of it is rooted in shame. And it's really difficult what you're talking about, with partners or family members, shaming them, and again, there's a ton of shame surrounding everyone, or a majority of individuals' relationships to food. And so anyone, out there that is dealing with that, I challenge you to take a step back and look at what that might mean about that other person's relationship to food, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really has nothing to do with you. And I've learned this along the way, particularly, I feel in the last 3-4 years, I've been at a delicate age as a woman where, I don't know, lots of different things in your 20s. Some of my friends still partying a lot, which is awesome. That's their prerogative. Some of my friends have children, right? And me with my choices to take care of myself, Gray, I'm sure you hear this, Josh, I'm sure you hear this too. People that are going to ask you why you're ordering a mocktail at dinner. Oh,
Yeah.
come on. You don't want to
Just
take a
one
shot with me, or
drink.
it's just
Yeah.
one drink. That says everything about their relationship to alcohol and their relationship to the drink that they've ordered, and nothing about mine.
Correct.
And it takes a lot of practice, and it's really uncomfortable to build that security within your own relationship to food, alcohol, exercise, insert, anything there. But always remember that it's going to be more about the other person's relationship to those vices.
Exactly. I try to remind people of that all the time. Like that's That's another thing that's very, like you said, internally challenging. It's very uncomfortable. It's the first time that you make a decision around your friends to order a grilled chicken salad instead of a huge ass quesadilla with French fries is really uncomfortable. The first time that you decide to not drink around your friends when everybody else is, like I can remember to the day the first time I went out and didn't drink because it was like, I don't know what to do, but it's like, it's fine. You get there to that point and you'll be okay. And to touch back on what you're saying earlier about forgiving your shortcomings, I think that's a great point because forgiveness is a huge thing. Like you can't always look back on the things that you've done in the past and judge yourself for that. But if you cannot find forgiveness right now, I think a really great thing is turn that into motivation. If you can't find forgiveness at this moment for the things that you've done to yourself in the past, use it as a motivation. Use it as a token for change. You're going to change that behavior right now.
You know, if there's any population on the history of the earth that's been over marketed for weight loss and health and gimmicks and tricks, it's women, right? Around health,
100%.
right? And I think it goes back to, like I said, if we had 100 women we polled, I would probably say 90% of them. I said, what's your goal? If 100 women we went and polled and said, hey, we're going to help you with health and fitness and wellness, what's your number one goal? 90% of them are going to say, I'd like to lose a couple pounds, right? All of them would like to say, I'd like to lose a couple pounds, right? Because of that, boom, the marketing pops open, right? The marketing brain says, ooh, 9 out of 10 women want to lose weight. Let's market them just completely ridiculous stuff, right? And they're going to market off the emotion of the how desperate they are, right? Anytime somebody's desperate for something, you can sell them anything.
Oh yeah,
I could sell them anything when they're desperate for something, right? Because of that, people believe a lot of crazy things about health and fitness, right? There's a lot of people are ideological, right? And I have people come to me about weight loss, and I had a woman come to me about weight loss. She's like, well, what's your deal with weight loss? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, what do you ascribe to? And I'm like, lady, there's nothing in my life I ascribe to for nothing. I am as fluid as there is no ideology on this earth that I ascribe to for shit, like at all. Like I want to vomit on your ideology, right? So, because of that, we talk about myths around fitness and health and wellness in women, right? And recently, I have a friend that loves to lift weights. She's like 55 and she's awesome. She's running. She's an animal. And she's super into lifting. I got her into lifting. She's even like, man, this has changed my life. I'm now lifting more. And she sent me a podcast of an instructor. And I guess it's Pilates. Is it Pilates? Is that Pilates that I sent you?
probably. Yeah. Yeah.
You are saying it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a thing? I can't remember if it was a Pilates thing or whatever. And it was a podcast, and the whole thing was around how lifting weights made them bulky and big. And I'm like, well, 2, you're dumb. Okay. 1, you're selling something. Okay.
That's exactly what I was
You're
going to say.
selling me something. How to get results does not match the business that you're in by lifting weights. You're into platforms and tension and Pilates and Met Pilates and the reform and all that. And you have to sell memberships. So the rhetoric that you're now selling is lifting weights makes women bulky, because I mean, no woman wants to look like me. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Most don't.
Yeah, most don't. God.
Never say never, Josh.
Yeah, that's, and that bothers me. 1, it's not true. 2, that's still something that's out there, right?
Yeah.
That's still something that's out there. That's still one of those things that I'm like, oh, I thought that was dead. No, it's still
coming
here.
back. God, it's coming back. It's coming back.
It's coming back worse than no carbs, like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to touch on a few things that women are told. And if you were a woman and you're listening to this and you're saying, what are some things that I should and should not do? What is false? What are a few things that are out there that are false that I'm being told? Um, and what are some things that I need to do today that can get me results starting today if I'm a woman? I don't think women are different than men as far as the method in which, obviously, caloric deficit, lifting weights, sleep, recovery, hydrate, all that kind of stuff is great, is what every person needs.
Mhm.
But for the brand new woman who's going to listen to that, she sees the title of this and she's like, I want to start getting healthy. Between you guys, what are the 3 to 5 things that women need to start doing today if they're going to improve their health and their wellness, their fitness, whether it's fat loss or whatever?
Well, I want to make a quick point about the Pilates thing, that I think is really interesting, and it's an important connection that we need to make as a society, right? Reformer Pilates, super trendy right now, right? And I'll use Reformer Pilates for the sake of this example, but there are several different um, disciplines or schools of Pilates. But Reformer Pilates is the one with the machine that you probably see often on Instagram and TikTok. The average Reformer Pilates membership monthly is about $250. Okay. So right out of the gate, it's not super accessible for 99% of people. So who are you seeing doing these Reformer Pilates all the times? It's your influencers, your celebrities, these people with large reach on social media, right?
Mhm.
The other thing with your Pilates, these are the same type of people who are affording, Botox treatments, or they're cool sculpting or whatever else, right? And we need that. It's just an important thing that we need to acknowledge. I'm not knocking
Right.
Pilates. My sister loves Pilates and she takes immaculate care of herself. I drop in with her from time to
I've done
time.
it. It's a
Yeah,
workout, right?
it's a workout. No, it's for real.
You're not building
It's
your
just
whole
where it's
platform
coming
around
from.
it.
It's where
100%.
this is
But
constantly coming
it's where
from.
this is coming from. And this, is a part of a greater conversation, but I just implore everyone to be really mindful where the content they're consuming is coming from. The influencer that is telling you that Reformer Pilates is the only good workout for her, that's pulling up in her brand new 2024 Range Rover with her freshly filled lips and is, has access to all of these other quote unquote wellness or health supplements or trends, right? I mean, I'm serious, I'm
Yeah. No,
serious.
it's for real.
So, just thinking about from an accessibility standpoint right out of the gate, it's coming and it's looking really glamorous because those are the people with the greatest reach to us, the Gen Pop plebes out here on social media, right? But to your point, it's marketing. And they're all selling us something, and they have been sold the $250 a month membership because they can afford it.
Mhm.
So thus they are going to go online and tell you it's the best thing they're doing, because so is that lip gloss that they just bought, and the pajamas that they're sleeping in last night. It's all part of the cycle, and it's all part of the machine. And so I just want everyone to be really mindful of the content they're consuming. Again, part of a larger conversation, but pay attention
Quickly,
to who's
I was going
telling
to
you
say,
that.
yeah, before you dive into the things that we need as women, that's a fantastic point. Listen to that point, because Pilates and really expensive studios, anywhere, not just Pilates, really expensive studios around the country, they have this like accessibility to it, right? So when you see something that's not accessible to everyone else, it feels a lot more glamorous. Weights are accessible to everyone. You can get weights at Target, so it's not as glamorous. So people don't buy into the trend until they're actually locked into it and have seen the difference. Because it's accessible to everybody, it doesn't feel like a trend. So just remember that. That was a fantastic point. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. Well, and that's, again, say I love people that I know in the Pilates field. I know you guys do too,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it's
100%.
just a larger statement and observation on what we as the public are being pushed from people with the greatest reach on platforms.
Yes.
For me personally, here are a few large shifts that I have made in my life. And I'll speak to, again, some extrinsic, some intrinsic, some physical, some mental. I just went on like a huge thing on my Instagram about this yesterday. Sleep is everything to me. Quality sleep is my number one top secret. And my husband and I kind of say something in our house that we will pick a good night's sleep over a workout 10 out of 10 times if we were to have to choose both. Now we're fortunate. And that doesn't mean every day, right? But let's say there's a day where the only time I could work out would infringe upon my sleep schedule. I'm going to protect my sleep. I started sleeping a lot better when I started to learn about sleep health and really developing a good sleep routine. Second thing, of course, your guys' favorite thing in the world, everybody's favorite thing that is probably in this field, is eating adequate protein. I won't say no, I had very limited education around protein. And I think this is interesting for women as well. And I was having a conversation with one of my best friends a couple months ago when we were on a trip together, and she made a great point. She has brothers, and she said, growing up, it was always pushed that like protein was for the boys. Protein is for the boys to get big and strong. You know, your brothers need protein. We got to get, the protein at the grocery store for your brothers. And it was just never a conversation that girls need protein too.
I've never thought about that.
Me neither.
Isn't that interesting?
I've never thought about that, right? Because the girls would eat salads and go for walks. The boys would lift the weights and eat the animals, right? That's just our these norms.
It's so basal, but like it is like, I think it was a really interesting point. Particularly, I don't have brothers, but particularly to hear from someone with brothers that growing up, it was just, she has always associated like eating protein with the boys getting all big and jacked, which is so funny.
But that matters. That play like
totally. Oh my God.
When you hear that over and over and over and over and over in your brain growing up, you can't just rewire that when you're 33 and decide to lift weights and work out, that all of a sudden you're going to be like 100 grams of protein today, when you're like, no, that's for the big bulky guy, right? Like,
sure, y'all do too. Like, I think my first introduction to protein powder, right, was like the guys in the gym with their shaker bottles, and like, I mean, 100%. Like, and I do think it now, as women, so much more research and adequate data has come out, and we understand the importance of it. But I think that's a great, just glimpse into kind of the mind of a woman as we're taking in all this information. So for me, I used to be a breakfast skipper, and was really bought into in the late 2010s, that like intermittent fasting craze. I cannot tell you, everything changed when I started eating a high protein breakfast within an hour of waking up. I didn't realize how hungry and miserable I was, and running off of pure fumes. Oh my God, waking up at 6 a.m. This is crazy. But this is what, again, I felt like people were telling me to do was, I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning, going to 6 a.m. Orange Theory, high intensity, getting ready for work, going straight into work. I wasn't eating until 11:30 or noon. And I had worked out 5 to 6 hours prior, and wondering why I'm not seeing any results from my workout. Right. I think obviously getting in the adequate protein, also eating and understanding the education behind food, I think is just especially important for women. Again, both of the things I just mentioned are a lack of education, right? So finding resources that you both trust and that are sound in their information, I think is a huge piece. And then I think finally finding, not finally, I could go on for days, but I'll let Gray take over in a second of what she finds success in, is finding community that really supports your vision, and being really open about your goals with the people that you trust and support. Because the minute that you open yourself up to that level of community, and you are getting that second layer of accountability put on you, you will succeed. This does not have to be, even if you're someone that is going into the gym and doing a lifting program, you don't have to do this alone. And I think some people are so intimidated by, I got to do this for me. I got to do this for me. Other people will be in your corner, but you have to trust them enough, and you have to be vulnerable with what you're looking for.
Definitely.
I want to do it alone.
Well, you're different. You go to jujitsu though. That's different. You go to jujitsu.
No. You're right. That is my.
That's your community. It's different.
So two things you said that.
And I also think women, are
need community.
community seekers.
Yeah, I don't
And
need
we're talking about women here, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
and not every
Cut off.
woman
Yeah, cut up.
not every woman, but I do think you can just look at like biological data through time. Women seek community
Yeah.
across a multitude of species too. So I think as a woman, that was a huge piece of my journey, was opening other people up and being vulnerable and saying, I need some accountability here.
Totally agree. And I feel
Yeah.
that way in my work life. Like when I moved
Totally.
out west and I was fully online and I wasn't around people as much, I lost the same spark that I had for the community because I wasn't in front of people. And I love teaching. I love teaching so much. I love watching other people's journeys. So like it lights my spark to be involved in a community in that way. The only other things I would add on to that is finding, or like for me personally, because I agree with the sleep and the eating enough, the protein, the community, making sure you're lifting weights in some capacity. I don't give a shit what it looks like for you. If it's in a class, if it's on your own, I think lifting weights not only makes you physically stronger, it also makes you mentally stronger. I can't tell you how many lessons I've learned from failing inside of the gym. Like I can't put it into words what you learn inside of a gym to come into an outside life. Like it just makes your confidence different. It makes your strength different, again, mentally and physically. And then just stress management, 100% stress management, and finding a way to be alone with yourself, to work on yourself in quieter forms. I think, Josh, you might not relate to this entirely, but like from a man's emotional response, but from a woman's emotional response, finding the time to exist just with yourself is huge to me. 100%.
The other thing I'll add to, and Gray, you and I have talked about this a good bit. And so kind of jumping off what you added about lifting weights, as far as extrinsic motivators go, can't tell you how many times, I mean, this is y'all's whole business. So I know this is something that you probably have a conversation around daily, is understanding the difference between muscle and fat, right? In your body, and kind of body recomposition, and understanding the education surrounding that, right? So I think a lot of people are surprised when they look at me and hear, oh, well, when I started, I'm only X pounds lighter than I was, but I am down 10% body fat.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that scares a lot of women. So I know your progress pics is a big thing. I also, the way my clothes fit and feel was a much bigger indicator than the scale. I think if the scale, even now, if the scale was my only tool, I would be, I think, a little bit resentful. If that was the only piece of data that I had and understood, I would up a long time ago. Right. But instead, I understand in body fat percentage and muscle mass percentage, right? And in the recomposition of my body. And I think that for a lot of women, all they're doing is getting on the scale every single morning and going, well, this isn't working, forget it. So I really challenge you to find some other get your tape measure out. There are several different ways that are still going to give you numerical and quantified data that's not just the scale.
Right.
So
what were you going to add, Josh?
When you look at I had a conversation with somebody today. A lot of issues that we run into as we age can be boiled down to sarcopenia, muscle burning, right? We lose muscle. I don't care if you're a human being, this is about women, so we can make it about women. If you're a female and you're not lifting weights, you're going to age faster. Your metabolism is going to slower. You're not going to have the physique you want. You're going to be weak, brittle, and die slow. That's research. That's just the bottom line. Okay. If you're not lifting weights and you want some other form and you're going to say it's because I'm bulky, you're just making excuses to not get results. That doesn't work for me anymore. You have to do it if you want to do it. If you have any kind of health goals whatsoever, what it does from insulin sensitivity to your metabolism, to your posture, to your sleep, everything, it affects everything within your body. Okay. Everything, especially for females, right? Lifting weights, that doesn't mean you're out there grinding out seven sets of singles with your knee wraps, right? We're doing some sort of resistance training 3 days a week. It's a must. There's no other way around it. It doesn't make you bulky. Your calorie intake does, right? the other thing you talked about, not doing intermittent fasting. Another thing that's just been totally, is there a place for it? Yes. Somebody I follow, if you're listening to this, and go follow her on Instagram, her name's Allison Fehrenbach. I think I'm saying that right.
Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Allison Fehrenbach put a big, huge post out, and she said 9 out of 10 women that she works with who have issues with late night snacking and overeating at night, 9 out of 10 times she can trace it back to not enough protein and not enough food at breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And not enough protein intake at breakfast first time in the day. And that, and getting women, there's a strategy to eating it, right? You got to work with people. So you can't just say, hey, go get more protein. You got to educate them on what protein is, how much protein is in this. It's not peanuts, right? What 50 grams looks like, what 30 grams looks like. You got to educate them, comes up with strategy. So that's where the coaching comes into play. Everybody knows you need more protein, but how? Like, because it changes your shopping, it changes your cook preparation, it changes a lot of things within your day, right? The other thing is, I had somebody just this morning conversation around something that he updates me every day with his protein intake. And protein intake was low. And I'm like, well, what's going on with your protein? And like out of the blue, he's like, yeah, I just started intermittent fasting. And I'm like, dude, if I could punch you through the face on this phone right now, I'd punch you through the face. He's like, well, it's just one of my better ways to maintain calories. The problem is like I'm just smashing that food up until 8 o'clock. I'm like, what time do you get up? He's like, 7. I eat breakfast. Like if I'm gonna eat breakfast, it'd be 7. What time do you go to bed? He's like, 9:30. All right, you can eat from 7 to 7. You're intermittent fasting from 7 to 7.
Yeah, you are.
Like we're fasting.
That's my fast. That's what I say. Yeah.
Right.
My sleep is my fast.
And I'm just like, and I know this guy well enough to be like, will you stop? Like you're trying to find every little trick in the book. You're trying to skim the system, and outside of the fact that like, well, it just helps with overeating. Well, it helps with overeating now. When you quit doing intermittent fasting later and you feel like it's not responsible, you're just going to add. This is part of the problem, dude. Part of the problem is you're trying to come up with every little gimmick, little trick. There's got to be a trick. It's like the people, oh, what's your trick to losing weight? What's your trick? Dude, there is no trick. It's really boring. It's not fun to market. It's not fun to market consistency and patience.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
Not glamorous.
It's not glamorous, right? But it is. It's consistency and it's patience. With the couple.
I think you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think you brought up an interesting point as well with in touching on your client that's in her 50s, and also talking a little bit about sarcopenia. You know, that age is kind of perimenopausal, and I think if anyone's listening, I really challenge you in that stage of your life. It's not too late to start lifting weights. You know, something that happens to women during menopause is you're going to see hormone changes and hormone fluctuations. And as women, we lose some of our testosterone, which women do have and is essential in building muscle, right? And so it's extremely hard for women to maintain their muscle mass if they're not doing anything to maintain it, right? To supplement it. And so if you're at that point in your life, it is essential because that uptick of the decline in muscle mass is going to start to become much steeper once you're in that perimenopausal phase of your life. You know, of course, there's so many studies in the relation to bone density and all these other things. But yeah, you know, I think it's critical for women.
100%. Another trend I know we wanted to talk about was, because I know we're getting a little low on time, but cycle syncing your training and cycle syncing your nutrition. And this is a very interesting conversation, in my opinion, because it's obviously a huge trend. And like we've been talking about for this whole entire podcast, the internet is always going to find something to harp on. I know on TikTok right now, it's cortisol. And if I see one more freaking high cortisol video, I'm going to delete my TikTok forever.
That's funny. But we don't have the same algorithm. I haven't seen one.
You're not getting cortisol?
I'm going to now.
Your phone heard me.
Yeah.
But yeah, cycle syncing, nutrition, and training. We'll dive into it.
It was like the number one thing that I got questions on. I get questions about it all the time. At this point in my fitness and my training, I'm the type of person, like, I'll try anything. If you can conceive a type of a workout, I guarantee I've tried it, or a method of training. I've probably tried it or dabbled in it. So I tried the whole cycle syncing thing. I have a ton of thoughts on it. First, there really isn't that much data and research behind it. Okay. There are a couple really solid people. I want to say one is Dr. Ryan. She's out of the University of North Carolina. She's doing a lot of research behind it, but it is so preliminary and the sample sizes are so small that, you know, tread carefully. And again, with all due respect, the girlie on TikTok that's just telling you how fabulous her cycle syncing isn't, you know, a solid source of a solid resource for you. Right. Couple things that I find to be interesting about cycle syncing. So there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, right? You've got your follicular, your ovulation, your luteal, and your menstrual. Okay. Now, all of the data we're seeing is pretty much around women that have a 28-day cycle, right? I personally don't have a regular 28-day cycle every single month. I've also learned through wearing my Oura ring and tracking my cycle through natural cycles. I've worn this for 3 months. I've ovulated on a different day every month time. And so training surrounding this very stringent 4-phase cycle, right? If you're not testing on an ovulation strip every single day, you don't really know where you are in your cycle. Couple other things. One, I got a lot of questions from this, from people who have hormonal birth control. Girls, this ain't gonna work for you because hormonal birth control suppresses your menstrual phases, okay? So it would really be moot in that instance. The other thing is that going back to the accessibility piece, the school of thought behind training around your menstrual cycle is that, you know, in the first couple of weeks, you're doing your heavy lifting, your high intensity training. As you move into your luteal phase, you're doing lower intensity things like yoga, Pilates per se. And then when you're menstrual, you might be doing no activity at all or light walking. Okay. That's pretty presumptive to think that the average woman has access to all 4 of those things in a month turnover, right? You know, Gray, you and I are a bit anomalistic in the sense that this is what we do as a job. So sure, when I was guinea pigging this, I could go to Spanga and I could go lift and I could go to yoga and whatever else. Most people don't have access to that kind of thing. So if we're talking about accessibility, that doesn't make a ton of sense with a normal training regimen. And finally, Josh, I'm very similar to you. I am so resistant to anything that's overly prescriptive. I think that the higher the walls that you put up around yourself, you know, the more resentful you're going to feel towards whatever's holding you in. So if that's a certain training plan where you feel so beholden to those, you know, guidelines or the rigidity of it, it has less, you know, less life in it. So I found that I didn't like it because if I was in my luteal phase, but let's say Gray were to text me and say, let's go to Spanga tomorrow. And I had to say no, because technically that's not what I was supposed to be doing. It didn't feel fun. It took, you know, a lot of the joy out of fitness for me. I really missed when I was in my luteal phase, I missed going to a Spanga session, or when I was at Spanga, maybe I wanted to go to yoga, and then you're not doing those workouts again for 4 weeks. So I just personally didn't find the longevity in it. That is not to say it's not going to work for some people, but I also think there's a ton of other things. If you're someone that is looking into this, what else are you doing to support your menstrual cycle, right? There are pieces of nutrition you should be incorporating. Are you taking care of your sleep? Are you hydrating properly? If you're not doing all those other things, it can be a bit futile to then say, well, my workout is going to dictate how I am in my cycle.
Exactly.
You know
I think
that
works with everything, right? There's a lot of low-lying fruit that people should be grabbing, right, before they get into a lot of other things. Like there's a lot of things you can be doing before you're sticking red light up your nose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things.
Stop being so sparkly.
There's a lot of things you could be doing before you go to your cryotherapy, right?
Yeah. It's not supposed to be so complicated. And I think that's where people conflate uncomplicated with easy. And there's a huge difference, right? I always use the example of running a marathon is uncomplicated. You got a good pair of shoes and you're just moving your legs, but it is not easy, right? And I want people to remember with their fitness, it can be really uncomplicated. testing your ovulation every single day determines your workout of the day. That's a little bit overly complicated, in my opinion.
Well, it just shows how much information we're overfed, right? Like we're just given so many things. I like listening to I think some of the very popular podcast fitness people, the overall net is positive, right? I don't believe everything they say. I'm not going to do everything they say, but the overall net positive of like a Dr. Uberman or people like that. It's the overall net is positive, right? People want to crap on something they don't agree. Listen, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because we never watch anything or listen to anything. But somebody put up a post of all the things the fitness influencers recommend you to do on a daily basis for your health. And,
oh my God,
and they just kind of made a joke about it. Of like, oh, I got to
full-time job.
This time I got to work out. This time I got to do my core this time I got to get my weightlifting. This time I got to do this at this time.
It's ridiculous.
I think what you're connecting to is when you talk about women and their cycle, you're like, holy crap, just pick the low-lying fruit.
Yeah.
Right? Sleep,
well, like I've said so many times, like be in the gray area. I think be in the gray area on everything, because from personal experience with the cycle syncing training thing, I have some luteal phases. I don't even realize I'm in my luteal phase. Like it doesn't even matter. And I have some luteal phases where I'm like, I feel awful. I don't feel good. So what does that do for me? I take it month to month. If I feel like smashing through a wall with my weightlifting in my luteal phase, I smash through a wall. If I don't feel like being heavy that week, I don't do it. Like it's not something you have to identify with every single month.
Yeah.
When it comes to cycle syncing nutrition, there are some things that might be helpful. It's not an exact science. I put together this like whole document on this of like some people have really identified with certain foods around their cycle and their different phases. But the general thing around it is you need to eat whole foods. You need to eat well.
Right.
That's it. Period. That's all it is.
That's a good cover overall, right?
Yeah.
Like if we ate more real foods.
Yeah. Period.
Well,
and low-lying fruit, right? Big brushes,
right.
Low-lying fruit.
It's not easy, but it should be uncomplicated, and that's my philosophy behind all of it.
Pretty much everything.
Behind pretty much everything from a fitness perspective, and I completely agree, Gray. I think if you wake up with a ton of energy, but you're in your luteal phase, it's a little bit of a bummer to have to be like, well, I guess I'm, going
to
do
yoga.
Right. When maybe what you want, and it takes a degree of bodily awareness and bodily intuition, which is a practice. Of course, it comes with time. But I think, the data is really new is kind of the bow of it all.
Yeah.
I like that.
And also like, I don't
like
either.
when people say, well, we just don't know enough information about it yet. Right. One thing that came out a long time ago, and we went to Mike Wines about it too, was eating based off your nutrigenics, like genetics, and
or your blood type.
Like come on, get up, right? But there was so much cool stuff that came out of people thinking about the possibilities of this being something. Like there's possibilities around nutrigenetics, and all that kind of stuff. And then like when you really dive into it, and then you pull Mike into a conversation, and the conversation goes like, yeah, just everything's really inconclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of maybes. Like it's a lot of like,
So to that point, like cling to the things that we know. Cling to working out, whatever that looks like for you. Cling to eating more protein. Cling to eating more food. Getting more sleep. Like those are the things we know.
Everybody needs more real food. Everybody needs more protein. Everybody needs sleep, exercise. And it's just I can't make a cool t-shirt off that, and I can't start a cool website, right? I can't start a cool website, and then I can't go all in.
There's no supplements for that.
Yeah, I can't go all in for it. Like I can't tell people to put butter in their coffee, right? You know what I'm saying? I can't, I can't call it something cool like bulletproof, right? And all of a sudden we're all just eating 70% fat, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not cool. Right. But I don't mind it, because I think the consistent message wins over time. I think it really does. Right. When you talk to people and they're going to come to you and they're going to say, oh, I'm really interested in my nutrition workouts around my cycle. You can go, well, why? What did you see? Like, why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And have a conversation with them about it. And then they go, oh, it's actually a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the
Yeah.
education around it is important because I do think like giving yourself the grace to have a lighter week during your luteal phase when you need it is acceptable. And it should be something that you value. You know, when
Yeah.
I do need a lighter day, I need to value that I need a lighter day.
Yeah.
But it's also
Absolutely.
something to just ignore when you don't want to do
Yeah,
it
when
and
you
be
don't
like,
want
go
to.
lift
Yeah.
weights. Like you're
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And I think, Josh, you make a great point. And, you know, nobody wants to hear the lame answer of, you know, how do I look like you? Or what are you doing? Nobody wants to hear what the truth is. They want this sexy, Gray calls it the magic
Mhm.
pill all the time, right? They want this really alluring answer to it, right? And the bottom line is years worth of discipline and commitment and choosing to prioritize this within my life. And that's really what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that point
Good
too,
choice.
like we talk about this all the time, like all three of us, we all fall underneath this. Our jobs are extremely disciplined. So
Yes.
asking me or asking Olivia or asking Josh, like, how do I look like you? That's not a fair question because we work out like 16 hours a week, you know?
Mhm.
So unless you're prepared to work out 16 hours per week, the discipline's going to be different. So it's not, you know,
Right.
that comparison game is not going to work.
And
It's not
therefore
gonna
the
work with
fueling's
anyone.
different, like everything.
I
Yeah.
eat like 3,000 calories a day. You don't
I
want
know.
it. You
I've
don't
asked,
want
I've
it.
asked, I have
You know
asked
how
clients
expensive my
before.
grocery bill is?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't
right.
want it.
I've asked clients before, because I've literally had clients hit me up and be like, I want to look like this person.
Mhm.
And first off, when they do that, I kind of feel bad for them, right? And because I'm like, well, they're that unhappy, they want to look like someone else. But I've had people say, how do I want to have a physique like this, and or I want to look like this, or I want to have these kind of results. What does this person do? I was like, well, the first, I always deflect and have a bit different conversation. I said, well, I can tell you what they didn't do. They never quit. They started and
Mm,
they didn't quit.
that's a
That's the
good
first. That's
answer.
the first thing I tell people when they start doing the
Yeah, I
comparison
love that.
game. When they start doing the comparison game, they're like, what they do? It's like, well, they started today and they didn't quit. I know that for a
Mm.
fact, right? I know that for a fact that person changed it, did it every day and didn't quit, right?
Yeah.
So I try to deflect it with a little bit of something else, because if they really knew how it'd be like having a 16-year-old kid come to me with his driver's license and be like, I want to race NASCAR tomorrow. Like, this is probably not gonna happen, right? So,
Mhm.
well, hey, I really appreciate the ladies only, right?
Yes,
I
for the
wanted to sit and listen for the
girls.
girls. It's funny when we do things like the ladies only. There's probably a lot of guys that can listen to this and probably learn that it's around the same
100%.
thing.
Know what your
It's
girl
around the-
needs.
It's around the
Encourage
same.
her,
Yeah,
love her,
yeah.
bring for her breakfast in bed. Please pet her before she goes to bed at night.
Yeah, make her life as
Flowers
easy as
are
Alston.
always a
possible.
good
Yeah.
Yes.
idea.
I hope
Yeah.
Alston hears this.
I
Right,
know.
right. I
Yeah, but men,
appreciate.
if you're listening, be a support
supportive.
system
Yeah.
for the
Mhm.
women in your life. We have enough pressures on us already. Okay. Be our hype man.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
we'll talk to y'all later.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
With all due respect.